You have 30 seconds.
Yeah. I think it's important that any candidate in this election is looking beyond the campaign, really in focusing on what they're working on with their platform and whatnot. You kind of craft a vision and you craft what you're doing until June of 2014. So to me, focusing on a campaign first, to me seems a little, maybe you need to look beyond that as far as looking forward to the future and focusing on the campaign a little, maybe not the wisest thing.
Thank you. Ms. Carter, would you like to deliver your response to the question now for 1 minute?
Okay, so the past two vice president externals of the USC have been USA president, and the point in me saying that I wanted to redefine the terms of the vice president external is that it hasn't exactly been done yet. I want to take the time to evaluate the utility of our vice presidents being the president of USA. First and foremost, as a vice president, you work for the students of Western and you are paid for by the students of Western. So at the end of the day, I want to make sure that it is in their best interest and that I'm working to fulfill the best interests of Western students. And that's why I raised that issue. I would never want to see USA in a conflict with our students. USA is an organization that works on behalf of Western. I want to make sure that there is no conflict of interest and making sure that USA works for our students, but making sure that USA does so in a way that our students are happy with, and making sure that our students' issues are always on the table.
Thank you. Mr. Wright, would you like to deliver a rebuttal?
I think the best way to make sure that our students' issues are on the table is through USA and through having strong leadership with USA through the Vice President External. I think the Vice President External this year has been defined, and it has been, we really know where it's going at this point, and the time is for action. We don't have any time for sitting around trying to redefine things in that portfolio, and I think it's really the time to really start getting our feet on the ground and advocating on all three levels within the portfolio: municipal, provincial, and federal.
Thank you, Ms. Carter.
So I'd just like to note that there actually is no terms of reference right now for the Vice President External. That's why it's a point of my platform. The Vice President External is still a very new position, but when I was doing my research to run for this position, I noticed that there is no terms of reference for the Vice President External. If and when I chose to run for USA President, I would do so making sure that it was in the best interest of students, but I'm in no place to make that comment right now because there is no terms of reference for my role, and that does need to be defined, and it's definitely not going to be a waste of time.
Thank you. All right, now I'd like to move along to the first of the questions that were submitted to us online electronically. All right, first question that we have, Ms. Carter, sorry, I've written down as Addison in my journal here. Ms. Carter, you'll be the first to respond. Mr. Wright, you'll have 30 seconds to deliver a rebuttal, and Ms. Carter, you'll have 30 seconds to reply to his rebuttal. So, is USA important, and how does your platform address the relationship between the USC and USA?
Okay, so USA is an extremely important lobbying organization. Each and every one of you in this room pay for USA to work for you. So what I've done in my platform, and actually a lot of my lobbying initiatives overlap with Steve's, and I think that means that those are very well thought out and that we're both on the same page in that a lot of financial barriers to post-secondary education need to be addressed. The important part with USA is making sure that we work with the organization and always keeping in mind that USA works for us. So if I were to be elected Vice President External, I would obviously have an extremely important role in making sure that I take the concerns of students directly to USA. Things like, let's say I'm getting a blank here. Things like penalties for employment. Students who work while they're on OSAP, on average can expect to lose about $2,500 off their loan. So that's something that we can make an improvement for you, and we're going to be working really hard with USA while making sure that we work really hard to represent you.
Mr. Wright, 30 seconds.
I'd just like to reiterate some of the comments I made. the best way for Western to represent its students is to have a leadership role in USA. We are the biggest university as far as delegations, the delegates go in Ontario, in USA, so we have a responsibility to maintain that leadership, and it maintains us as a thought leader throughout the province, which I really think that we are. USA, the things that they've done would not be possible without such an active role that we have in it, such as credit transfer, 30% off tuition grant, those type of things. When moving forward with USA and any kind of advocacy, we need to. Sorry.
So I would just like to respond and say that whether or not I decide to run for USA president, right now I'm deciding to run for vice president external, and that's what I'm focused on. If I run for USA president, that will depend on whether or not I think that it is good for students. As a member of the steering committee, I think that I can make a big difference for students, and I'm not taking USA lightly whatsoever. But being an administrative role, like the president, doesn't necessarily mean that dealing with HR issues at USA is the best possible use of my time on behalf of Western students.
Thank you. Now, in typical USC style, if we're doing something, might as well keep doing it until everyone hates it. So we're going to continue along the same theme, and I'm going to ask a question, sort of a slightly longer question regarding USA. And the USC's Vice President External, and formerly University Affairs, has a history of participating in USA in senior roles. Do you believe that the trade-off of time dedicated towards provincial advocacy is worth the reduction in time available for local and municipal advocacy? Mr. Wright, you'll be the first one to answer that question, and you will have 60 seconds when you're ready.
As far as a time trade-off goes, I think the amount of time that the Vice President External spends at USA is we definitely see a big payoff with that. As far as seeing what Western students want at the provincial level and really being able to take a leadership role in advocating for that. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth it as far as taking that leadership role in USA. But as far as the municipal question goes, I think we've seen from Amir, and I really commend him on this, of being able to juggle both, taking the USA presidency at the same time directing it towards a more external, more municipal focused approach.
Thank you, Ms. Carter.
I was just going to kind of correct you there, Steve, because there's more than 2 areas that we need to be focusing federally, and yeah, I'll give props to Amir, absolutely, for doing all 3 this year, but we definitely need to be focusing municipally, because I think that there is definitely a little bit of a lack about that at the USC.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Anything to add? All right. Ms. Carter, would you like to respond to the question? By the way, I can repeat it if you'd like.
That's okay. I think I'm good. So I'll just reiterate what I just said. There needs to be a strong balance from your VP external across all areas. We need to make sure that we're lobbying for students, both municipally, provincially, and federally. USA is a big time commitment. I did speak with Amir, and I asked him kind of on average how many days he's out of the office because of USA. He said that it really wasn't a large time commitment. The problem for me lies in the time that he spends doing email communication and dealing with USA-related issues. And a lot of being a president is dealing with administrative issues, and I find it hard to judge the utility of that from my position when I know that I'm working for Western students and I want to be available to Western students. The USC has already said that they've released their State of Municipal Affairs report. We need to be focusing municipally. I really do want to provide that focus next year, and hopefully I can do that for you. But there definitely needs to be a balance, and I'm hoping to be able to provide that balance.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
I think in the position of president of USA, you have the unique opportunity to kind of take the leadership role with other schools and other counterparts at MAC, at Laurier, Waterloo, Trent, and Brock. And that creates a culture of sharing information, sharing best practices, and when you take the leadership role, you get to administer that, like Jen said, but at the same time, really take in all of that information from all the different schools, because you do play the central role in that. So.
Okay. Sorry, Ms. Carter, do you want to give a quick response to that?
No, it's okay.
All right. Okay, just sort of based on the way that things are going, I'm going to make a quick modification to the structure. Where I'm actually going to make a little bit of a recommendation. Now, if anyone remembers the vice presidential debates in the last US election, The funniest part was whenever the camera panned over Joe Biden and he was making a funny face. And the second funniest parts were whenever the candidates asked the other person a question. So if you make a rebuttal, I'm going to ask that there be some sort of a question worked into there or an upward inflection of the sentence to make it sound like a question. Okie dokie. So I'm going to come out, there's another question that says, let's get right out there and ask it. If elected and have the approval of council, do you have intentions of running for the USA president or an executive role on USA? Ms. Carter?
I think that this question I've already answered, and I'll answer it again. I will consider it if it's in the best interest of Western students. This is not something that I have thought about right now, because right now I'm focused on running to be your Vice President External. I know that this may be included in the job, but this is something that I want to talk to council about. I want to hear what they have to say about it, because I work for them and I would work for you guys. So it's very important to me that it is in the best interest of the students, and I will not make a decision about that until I have had the time to speak more in depth with Amir and to evaluate the role to determine whether or not that definitely is in the best interest of our students.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Looking forward beyond the campaign, I think being USA President as Vice President External certainly does add value to the role and does bring a unique perspective to the role of Vice President External, and really gives us an opportunity to be thought leaders and to take a leadership role in such a large and powerful provincial advocacy. That being said, it is a council decision at the end of the day, and reiterating what Jen said, it is a council decision. So as far as saying something whether I would plan to run, I would plan to run if depending on what council thinks. So.
All right, thank you. So that was just sort of a quick response to things. So we're not having rebuttals either way, because I think we've covered it. But I do have a specific question to Mr. Wright. If you were elected as an executive to USA at the behest of council, what division of time do you envision?
I would say 40% to USA. Just as far as my time goes, I think we really do need to continue to focus on provincial advocacy. Obviously we need to shift focus a little bit to municipal, but we can't lose the focus that we have on provincial. And also federal is important as well. We do have CASA, which is the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations, which is our federal advocacy body. We need to focus on that as well. So 40% to USA, I would say.
Thank you. Ms. Carter, did you have a question?
Yeah, working as a student representative right now, I am paid for by the students, and that is not something that I will ever take lightly. I would be again next year if I were to be elected. How do you reconcile the fact that you're being paid for by the students and yet 40% of your time would be spent out of the office, not necessarily doing things that could directly benefit Western students? Not that USA is not a wonderful organization, but how can you justify being out of the office so much when you work for students and should be directly responsible to Western students?
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
When I'm out of the office, I would be meeting with councillors at Queen's Park, speaking up and fighting for the students that I represent and that USA represents. So I think to say that when me being out of the office and having students pay for me to be out of the office, I think it's a little unfair to say that I am not serving students in that role, because when I would be out of the office doing those things, that is advocacy and that is fighting for the things that students feel that is right. And we've seen that in everything that USA has done so far.
Thank you. Ms. Carter, I'm going to ask you the same question. If, hypothetically, at the behest of council, you were elected as USA president, what division of time would you envision between the two roles?
I feel like I'm absolutely being a broken record here, so I'm sorry, guys. At the end of the day, I want to make sure that everything that I do is going to be in the best interest of Western students. So whether you run for USA Executive or whether you are a member of the steering committee, it's not that you're not involved with USA. If I become Vice President External and don't run for an executive member of USA, I would still be a member of the steering committee. And I think that I would have a very, very vested interest in representing all of your advocacy points over to USA, but that does not mean that I have to be in exactly a leadership role to do so. If I were to run for an executive position for USA, I think Amir said that at most he's out of the office 5 days, but it's definitely a balancing act, but I want to make sure that no matter what, my time here would be balanced more than my time over there. Even though the initiatives are extremely beneficial to students, I can be involved in the process without making such a big time commitment.
Thank you. Mr. Wright, any rebuttals? Okay, thank you. I think we've really beaten that horse to death with a stick and broken it too. So we're going to shift gears right now, and we're going to move out to something just a little more open-ended. Mr. Wright will be the first one to answer this question. Oh, sorry, no, you were the first one to answer the last one. Ms. Carter. So the question from the audience is, student advocacy belongs on our campus. What do you see its importance of being off campus? Do you support students acting on behalf of others off campus or for their own means, but off campus? Well, part of being a vice presidential candidate is sometimes you have to interpret things that you don't quite understand. So it also adds to competencies that you might have in translating the Rosetta Stone. So Ms. Carter, your best effort at responding to that.
I think it goes a little bit to interpretation, and my interpretation of that question is that student is making a point that advocacy is obviously important and asking whether students should be advocating for others in the community. And I think that external advocacy is very important. I'm really excited to hopefully be able to work with the municipality and make some changes for students. But I think that one of the most important parts of external advocacy is making sure that our students do feel empowered to advocate for themselves and that they have the knowledge base to do that. I would love to be available to students if they want to talk about the best possible paths of which to advocate and make sure that they feel comfortable. And I think that one of the best ways to do that is building strong community partnerships within London, because if they're going to be advocating in London, we want to make sure that they have the tools necessary to do that, whether that's at Queen's Park or whether that's